Welcome back to Joellen's Kitchen. Today we're going to make Dutch baby. Actually, it's an old-fashioned recipe. And today when we make pancakes, we often make the little personalized pieces and single servings, if you will. Or even at the grocery store, we buy them frozen and they're perfectly shaped and we pop them in either the microwave or a toaster. But in the old days, I want you to imagine, now this is a pretty heavy pan, but it's newer, but imagine this is an old iron skillet. They would take this old iron skillet, and again, my improvisation, so to speak, is to spray one time a little bit of Pam in the bottom and the sides so nothing sticks, or if it does stick, it's very light and it's easier to clean up. So I wanted to do that so I didn't forget. But today's recipe is really easy. You dump everything into one mixing bowl, or you can use a blender if you prefer that method. I just think a mixing bowl is easier to clean instead of all those blades. But whichever you prefer, you can use a whisk or the blender. So what we want to do is start with only a half cup of flour. We're going to put that in. And we're going to put in a half teaspoon of salt. Now you can measure it, but I just kind of use the palm of my hand. I'm so used to doing it. You also want to put in, I'll call it a pinch of nutmeg. And you don't use a lot of nutmeg, so I'll just sprinkle a little in. A pinch of nutmeg, if you will. And then you want a teaspoon of vanilla, and I just use a capful. It seems to work out pretty darn well. So I'm going to put that in there. And if I set all my ingredients off to the right, I won't forget what I already put in it. We also want a tablespoon, and if you have a sweet tooth, you can put 2 in, but a tablespoon of sugar, and that's taken care of. And then we want eggs. Now it depends if you like really fluffy and kind of a pudding type center, or if you prefer just a regular pancake. So the more eggs you put in, the fluffier it technically gets. So I'm going to put 3 eggs in. 1, 2, that little metal ding that you heard, that was my oven. I have it preheating today because we're going to make this in the oven. I didn't mention that before, rather than on top of the stove. But it took relatively few ingredients, or the ingredients that you would normally find on the farm. So they didn't have a supermarket to run to. One of those things, they would have a cow, obviously. But today we're going to use some milk. We're going to make a half a cup of milk here. Oh, I wanted to make sure you knew this is PA preferred, since I'm in Pennsylvania and this is Pennsylvania Dutch cooking. We want to use Pennsylvania Dutch ingredients, and Wengert's milk is one of those. It's a local dairy. So we have a half a cup of milk, and we're going to put that in there. And I'll set my milk off to the side. I think that is it. So it's very few ingredients. Again, we have the flour and the sugar and the eggs, a little bit of nutmeg, and if you don't like nutmeg, you don't have to put it in, but I like it. And then some vanilla and salt. So that's what we have in here. 1 whisk, and break those egg yolks, and just whisk it around really good till it's thoroughly mixed and smooth. Okay, and the other thing I want to do is I want to get a half a stick, which is 4 tablespoons of butter. I like to use enough so it doesn't stick. If you prefer to cut down on that, that's fine, but I use a half a stick. We're going to put that in. We're going to melt this butter all over the bottom and then hopefully coat the sides of the pan a little bit. But I'm not too worried about that because I do have the Pam in there. This is my old-fashioned cook stove. I think I've had more comments on my cook stove than my cooking, but that's okay. It's warm. Throw it in there and let that butter melt while I finish mixing this. You don't want to let your butter burn, by the way. You just want it melted, not burnt. Well, that looks pretty smooth. So we'll just wait on that butter to melt. I actually should have put that in first, then it would be ready for me. The risk of doing that is if I get distracted and then it turns brown. So it will be ready in just a minute. Let me talk about the toppings while we're waiting for that. To make it look nice, because it looks terrible. Like I said, you're used to seeing perfect little pancakes. You're not going to get that. It is one huge pancake, and it's made for sharing, of course. And inside, what you want to do after you have it out is put some fresh fruit. I have blueberries, and I think these are blackberries. They're pretty big. And then I also have some red raspberries. So sprinkle that in the center, and it'll be colorful, and it'll give it that pretty appearance or the table appeal that people will want to eat it, because it looks pretty bad when it comes out, but that's what they had for their pancakes. The other thing you can do is sprinkle some white confectioner's sugar around the edges, and it just gives it a very nice eye appeal, if you will. But if you don't like fresh fruit, throw it out. I mean, don't do it. Fresh fruit is an option, of course. If you have a hankering for orange marmalade, you can use that. If you like cinnamon sugar, you can sprinkle it with that. Just about anything. The other thing I did, I made this lemon butter some time ago. So lemon on the pancake, why not, right? And of course there's the traditional syrup. Now they probably had maple syrup and maybe a blueberry or elderberry syrup, something of that nature, but they didn't have a lot of variety of syrups either. But today we're going to use the more colorful versions, and hopefully you'll enjoy this journey with me to make an old-fashioned Dutch baby. So I'm excited to taste it, and I think it's going to be pretty good. How can you go wrong with the toppings we have, right? Let me check on that butter. Okay. By the way, you want to let this preheat on 400 degrees, and when we put it in the oven, we're going to bake it for 20 minutes, and then probably turn it down real low for another 5 minutes, and let it finish cooking in its own heat. That way we won't overcook it or burn it. So here we go. Again, we can turn this up around the edges just a little bit to make sure there's plenty of butter and that it doesn't stick to the sides. Alrighty, here we go. And I have a little spatula so we can scrape out all the batter, because there's not a whole lot there, let's face it, because we only used half a cup of flour. Okay, let's put this into the oven. And I just want to check my flame. Okay, I got yellow there. I can get rid of the yellow so it's blue, then it's burning more efficiently. Check my time. And we'll be back in 20 minutes to check on the final product. Okay, it's time to bring out this Dutch baby. Let's see what it looks like. Oh yeah. One Dutch baby. It's almost like a custard in the center, and it's brown on the edges, and it's rolled in like it's holding a baby. I found this old sieve that was on my grandpa's farm, and so I'm going to use that. Pour in a little bit of confectioner's sugar, and then I can sprinkle it around the outside edge, like so. To make it appealing, we're going to put in some blackberries. And some raspberries. And you don't have to, but I have them, so I'll put them in. A couple of blueberries. You saw it kind of looked ugly when I first got it out, and yet it's a very unique dish. So here it is now, with all the fruit in it. Looks a lot nicer, doesn't it? Let's see what it tastes like. I might tackle it first with a pizza cutter. You can cut it into 4 or 6 pieces, whatever your serving size might be acceptable in your household. A pie spatula will be probably the best to pick it up. And it wants to curl on me, but that's okay. We'll get it over here and we'll straighten her out. And I'll just get a few more of those berries on there. And here's what I have plated. So we're going to cut off a piece, and it's not real thick, it just looks big because it curled up around. Bon appetit. Not bad at all. And again, if you want, you can use any kind of marmalade, like orange marmalade or regular jams, cinnamon sugar. This happens to be homemade lemon butter. Any of those things would be good on it. I just chose the fruit. I thought it would look nice. Enjoy, and thank you for joining me.